So now that we've looked at cosmopolitanism versus parochialism, thought about the scope, the size, and constituency of our ethical theory, we've looked at theories about what the primary nexus of agency is going to be, and we've looked at our political ideologies about how to structure society. Now that we've got all those distinctions out there, let's turn our attention to Kupper's specific criticism of Singer. Thinks they're both cosmopolitans, and in Why Charity is Never Enough, he then says, look, here's why I think that your position is inadequate, and in some cases he describes it as potentially dangerous. And I think the quote on page 113 there provides us with a nice sort of executive summary of Kupper's beef with Singer. So he says, how we address poverty is a matter of judgment. Understanding the relevant features of a social system or situation, considering which principles are relevant, whether they present competing demands in practice, and how other agents are likely to act. And finally, adjudicating a contextual course of action. Nothing in the principle of aid or charity determines that the right action in any or all contexts is donation. So when we're trying to understand what it is that Kupper thinks is so potentially dangerous in Singer's position, I think that last bit is as important as the first bit. So Kupper seems to perceive Singer's proposal as arguing essentially that what we need to do to eradicate extreme poverty from the world is just to throw money at it. We'll just make it rain and things will get better. And Kupper's response to this is to say something like, look, I agree with you that we have a greater moral obligation to commit greater resources to trying to redress, remediate these social ills. I agree with that completely. However, in order for us to get anywhere, we need more guidance than your view provides us with for determining how to allocate those resources that we now are willing to devote to addressing these pervasive social ills. And so when we want to look at how Singer might respond to Kupper, right, or evaluate how effective Kupper's criticism is of Singer, we want to look at two sorts of things. First of all, does he in fact characterize what Singer's trying to accomplish? Is Singer really trying to give us a highly nuanced policy prescription for ending extreme poverty? Or is he merely trying to argue for an increased obligation? That is a real commitment of much more significant resources to these problems. And if the former, is he in fact guilty of providing us with insufficient or naive policy recommendations? Right? Is he in fact woefully short when it comes to evaluations of the relevant features of a social system, of determining the various principles, right? Is he sort of on the theoretical policy side just so bereft of depth that he's dangerous? So let's look again at those three dimensions of analysis for formulating and evaluating policies within what I'm calling contextual judgment, within his sort of framework. So the first one, political economy, charts the causal dynamics of the global economy and indicates the extent to which these could be controlled. So when we look at Singer's position, Singer has something to say. It's not particularly detailed, but he does have a view. He says, look, we have extreme poverty because we have dramatically unequal distributions of surpluses. So there's great wealth inequality built into the way the economy works. One way that we can mediate that, one way that we can tamp that down, is to just redistribute some of that wealth, redistribute some of that surplus. So it's not as though Singer has no notion about that. He says, look, if you want, working people's quality of life to be improved, right, or raise the minimum wage, then that will devote more resources from the business enterprises to the individuals, and that will raise their quality of life. Now, it's not particularly sophisticated or nuanced, but it is something. Singer, I think, has one other thing that he can say. Namely, he could say something like this. Look, I don't just say make it rain. I don't just say just grab a stack of hundreds and throw it towards Somalia. What I tell you to do is to devote significantly greater amounts of your personal discretionary income to already established reputable institutions whose purpose it is to understand the causal dynamics of global economies, understand the extent to which those causal dynamics can be manipulated and controlled, and then to take the resources that you've now allocated to them and to use their knowledge to affect those controls, to manipulate those causal dynamics. So in effect, I'm outsourcing the political economy stuff. And he might even go further by saying, look, I'm arguing for what the average person in an affluent society is going to do. And I'm making this, many people feel really strong demand on them. I'm saying they have to commit all this stuff. Your view is not only would they have to commit all those resources, but they also now have to get PhDs in political economy, and they also now have to figure all that stuff out themselves. That doesn't make any sense. That isn't how economies work. Right? That isn't how the switch over to agrarian economies help to facilitate the creation of surpluses. People specialize. One of the specializations that we can recognize is specializations in knowledge of political economy. So the average person doesn't need to do that. And I don't need to provide them with that knowledge. I need to point them towards the reputable institutions that already have that knowledge. And so I think he can make those sorts of responses to Kuper. How about a theory of justice? Well, utilitarianism is just that. It is historically and currently a theory of justice. It supplies a metric for evaluating goals, and it derives a set of principles with which to approach problems of development. That's what it was invented for. That's what its advocates sell it as. And so there's no doubt that Singer provides that. And so Singer would say, look, I provide you with a theory of justice with great street cred that has accomplished a great deal in the history of contemporary Western democracies. And you may not like the theory, but it's there. So it's questionable whether or not a theory of justice is really lacking there. The last line, dimension of analysis, is political sociology. And that encompasses and distinguishes the respective roles of individuals and various institutions in advancing our moral ends. And here I think, again, Singer's papers are relatively thin on this. Right? He doesn't offer up a lot of sophisticated theories about the respective roles of individuals and institutions in advancing these moral ends, but it's not bereft of them. Individuals, he says, have a responsibility to act in ways that are consistent with their ethical obligations as dictated by that theory of justice. And I point you to the institutions that they should interact with, the purposes of advancing these moral goals. That is, these respected NGOs like Oxfam and so on. So I have got stuff there, he might say. Now, Kuper might say, yeah, that's pretty superficial. And again, he might respond in the same way I suggested he could respond with the political economy stuff. Namely, he might respond to Kuper by saying, look, I'm outsourcing expertise in this. I'm arguing for what the average person in the average affluent country should be doing. And I'm already requiring a lot of them. Even I acknowledge that to some degree. You want them to now not only devote resources to ending of extreme poverty, but to gain all the sophistication in, political sociology that facilitates them formulating their own policy directives about the roles of individuals and institutions in achieving those ends. And I say, no, that's not how our society works. I am outsourcing that. I am giving my resources to an institution whose specific intent and purpose is to collect together people who focus on understanding the roles of individuals and institutions and how to coordinate those to advance the moral ends that we both agree on. And so in this way, he might well respond to Kuper as he did with the political economy stuff, or he could with the political economy stuff. So this is kind of a Scotch verdict. Right? It's true, I think, as Kuper points out, that the material in the papers that he points to from Singer don't contain a lot of sophisticated political economy or sophisticated political sociology. Right? They don't give us a lot of fine-tuned details about how to allocate resources. They do, however, have mechanisms for all of that. And I think Singer can respond and say, look, I don't have to provide all those details so long as I provide a way that those details get handled. The second thing I think that Singer might well say in response to this criticism is, look, you're criticizing me because I don't accomplish something that I don't intend to do. Sure, we may think it's important, but I don't think it's important that I did it there. My goal, what I'm trying to do, is simply argue that, in fact, people have a moral obligation to devote a significantly larger percentage of their discretionary income to the alleviation of these persistent social ills across international borders and geographical distances. That's my goal. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. And nothing you say undermines that conclusion at all. It seems, in fact, consistent with that conclusion. What you seem to be arguing is that, yes, I want more now. And I agree with you. That would be great. Everything you say, insofar as people are capable of doing it, they should do it. Insofar as they're not, they should try and follow my suggestions of outsourcing it to relevant experts who have the time and expertise to craft the policies and evaluate the outcomes. And I think there's something plausible in that. Whether or not we agree with Singer about the extent to which the average person in the average affluent society really should be allocating the amount of resources that he suggests, even in the cases where he goes down to a mere 5% of your income. But that's his goal. And his goal isn't really to come up with a very sophisticated, nuanced, specific policy for specific context in dealing with that. Nothing he says is inconsistent with that. And in fact, the things that he suggests really try to guide those resources to individuals that would do that.